The Raiders missed this week with an ankle sprain, wasn't even able to practice at all last week. So obviously there is concern going into this week about the potential for Jacobs to miss a second straight game. We'll see what he's able to do, if anything, once the Raiders get back on the practice field on Wednesday. But at this point, it is a concern for those in the fantasy football playoffs. You might be without Josh Jacobs for this week. The Giants won a game with Colt McCoy as their starting quarterback in Seattle Sunday because Daniel Jones, their starter, had a hamstring injury and missed the game. But an encouraging possibility that Jones is back for Week 14. He did practice a little bit on a limited basis last week. He did make the trip to Seattle and participate in the team's walkthrough there on Saturday. Head coach Joe Judge was thinking about making him active for the game, even as the backup. Ultimately decided not to do that. But all encouraging signs, if Daniel Jones can get out there on the practice field this week, that hamstring injury might only end up costing him the one game.
All right, obviously critical games for the Giants in Washington. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but let's get to another team in the NFC East, and it's one of the biggest stories coming from the weekend. Carson Wentz being benched for Jalen Hurts during the Eagles' loss to Green Bay. Yesterday, head coach Doug Peterson was asked if a decision had been made regarding who starts this week against New Orleans, and here is what he said.
No, I have not made a decision yet. Not prepared right now to make any statement or decisions on that. I'm still processing a lot of things and going through a lot of things before I make that decision. So that when I know, you'll know.
Sure. I'm not asking what the decision is, but what goes into that decision?
I would like to keep those private, so that's just between me and me.
I hadn't heard that part of it. That's funny. Okay, Graziano, what are we hearing about this situation?
Look, I'm not Greg McElroy. I'm not going to break down quarterback tape, but I have covered my share of Monday head coach news conferences, and I know that when the coach says he hasn't decided who the quarterback's going to be next week, it's probably not going to be the guy that started this past week. So it sounds like the Eagles are at least giving serious consideration to starting Jalen Hurts if they haven't already made that decision. Oftentimes the coach will want to make sure and tell the quarterbacks before he tells the entire world, but I would expect an announcement tomorrow on who the Eagles starting quarterback will be this week, and I don't think anybody would be shocked if it turned out to be the rookie second-round pick Jalen Hurts.
All right, now hold that thought a minute, Dan, because I do want to come back to you on what this all may mean long-term. But Greg, let me come to you from a quarterback's perspective. Don't just tell me, but show me who you believe should be the quarterback in Philly this week.
Well, if the goal for the Eagles is to continue to try for a playoff push and to win games right now, the quarterback needs to be Jalen Hurts. And I'll show you exactly why, because there were moments in which he made everyone around him better. It's 3rd and 4, critical down and distance. There's pressure off the left-hand side. Guess what? The running back completely busts the protection. Thanks a lot, Jeff Saturday. Clean it up. All right, running back inside. Here comes the Mike or the nickel right off the left. Unblocked. Jalen's unfazed. He throws a strike to Jalen Reagor down the left side. But here's where he really helps the protection. You have pass rushers up front that are trying to get after the quarterback. But when you have a mobile option, you can't overrush the passer. It's exactly what happens right here. You have 3 Green Bay Packers that are on the same level as Jalen Hurts, and he bursts free, makes a guy miss, and he turns it into a first down. Similar situation right here. 4th and long, 4th and forever, obvious passing situation. Guy gets rushed past Jalen Hurts. Gives him a little bit of a window to buy a little time and throw a strike downfield for his first career touchdown pass. This is what's going to allow Philly to be a little better down the road, is that Jalen Hurts' mobility makes not just his receivers better to buy a little extra time to get open, but his offensive line, which has been a problem all year, his offensive line to basically keep guys in front because he can exploit you if you get rushed past the passer.
I like it. So it sounds like the coach is leaning towards Hurts, and Greg is definitely leaning towards Hurts. Chris Canty, which way are you leaning?
Well, the fact that Doug Peterson can't make up his mind about who his starting quarterback is going to be when you're paying Carson Wentz $32 million a year says all you need to know. We got an 11.5 game sample size on Carson Wentz, and it hadn't been good enough, G. It just hasn't. He leads the league in turnovers. He's been the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. It's just not happening for him. And with the defense playing the way that it is, it's a real shame. So I can understand what Greg is saying by giving Jalen Hurts an opportunity to show what he can do. And you did see a little bit of a spark in that game against the Green Bay Packers. So I just say maybe Jalen Hurts might be the direction that you turn just because Carson Wentz hasn't worked out.
Again, they're going up against a great defense this weekend in New Orleans. Meanwhile, let me get Graziano back in here if I can, because one of the suppositions that I have been acting upon for the last several weeks is that because of the contract, Carson Wentz is the quarterback of the Eagles next year no matter what. And Dan, we were talking about this morning. That may not be 100% right.
Not 100%. Still more likely than not. Look, the people have to understand they can't really cut him. It's a $59 million cap hit if they cut him, so you can't possibly carry that. If you could trade him before the third day of the league year, when his $10 million 2021 roster bonus kicks in, the dead cap hit would be about $35 million. That's a wash. That's about what you'd be carrying if you kept him on the team as a cap hit in 2021. So if you could find a team that's willing to take a shot on a guy who's going to be 28 years old, that was once the number 2 pick in the draft, that has played well in the past, and the acquiring team would only have to pay him, I say only, about $25 million a year, not that $32 million a year, it's possible they could move on. But the Eagles would have to decide that it's done, there's no hope for Carson Wentz, and they would have to be willing to go with a very cheap option next year, and that could end up being Jalen Hurts if he shows enough over the last couple weeks. A lot of ifs there, but yeah, they could theoretically trade him if they decided they didn't believe in him anymore.
I thought it was worth putting on the show because I think a lot of people think, well, no team's going to trade for that $59 million. Well, you're not trading for that. You're trading for something that is a reasonable quarterback number going forward. You have to find someone who believes in Wentz. That might not be out there. We'll find out. Anyway, let's get up and go. Some of the other busy days worth of sports news. This is worth keeping a close eye on. Rockets coach Stephen Silas referred to disgruntled superstar James Harden's absence from training camp as a holdout yesterday. He also said there's no timetable of which he's aware for Harden to return. Harden missed Houston's first team workout on Sunday. Again, worth keeping a close eye on. Steph Curry says the possibility of signing an extension with the Warriors is, quote, on the table. He's 32. He's currently in the midst of a 5-year, $201 million deal. He's eligible to sign a 3-year extension worth another $156 million. And then college football. Saturday's game between number 5 Texas A&M and Ole Miss has been postponed because of positive tests within the Ole Miss program. Texas A&M will now have a maximum of 9 regular season games on its playoff resume. Their only loss was to number 1 Alabama. Meanwhile, tonight at 7 Eastern on ESPN and on the ESPN app, the exclusive reveal of the college football playoff top 25 rankings. Reese and the crew will break them down top to bottom, including a live interview with committee chair Gary Bardo. As we continue here, is it number 12 or number